Hey, my name's Travis Bull Johnson. I'm running for Congress against Michelle Fishbach.
There's no money in ending war. There's no money in limiting government. To me, part of what makes America great are our small businesses, our small farms, and that's what's getting squeezed out by the establishment politicians.
That's why I say, raise cattle and not taxes. Hey, my name's Travis Bull Johnson.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Bull. I've got Mark Lindquist here with me in the studio right now. And
good morning, brother.
I brought Mark on. This is the first time I've ever had a guest. And everything was going smooth for a while. And then the show actually kicks on. And I'm like, I almost removed myself from the stream.
Which would have left hard to know what button to push, man.
Would have left this as Mark's show this morning. But you know, it almost is anyway. Yeah, for those of you who don't know Mark was originally started as my opponent. I mean, we were both running for Congress in Minnesota's 7th district. And when I first saw Mark was running, it was kind of a funny story because I see him up there and he's got this bus with this wrapping on it. And it was something like, it had something to the effect of your veteran choice or something like that on it. And I'm like, dude, wait a minute. I've been campaigning here for 7 or 8 months. I'm a veteran. What the hell?
Who the hell is this guy?
Yeah. So I gave Mark a call and we talked a little bit and we soon became fast friends. I mean, it's kind of funny because we would meet together for lunch and we would sit here just talking politics.
Yeah.
But we were two people campaigning running against each other for Congress.
Yeah.
But we were able to sit down, have some lunch, have some coffee, and actually discuss politics.
Yeah.
And if somebody would have walked up, they would have just figured it was two dudes sitting there talking, would never have figured these are two guys who are actually competitors running against each other for political office. Because damn it, they look like you like each other. And I tell you what, I remember when Mark decided to drop out and go to Ukraine, I got a phone call from Mark. Mark's like, dude, I got good news and bad news. I was like, okay, hit me with the bad news first. He's like, dude, I'm going to Ukraine. Like, shit. What's the good news? Your job just got a hell of a lot easier because I'm not in the race.
So I was so proud you carried the torch for us, man. You know, when you look at the political mess, and we could go all show and a daily show all day long about the mess that is the political world, right? I was so happy that in our case, me and you, it wasn't the same old bitter politics. It wasn't you're my enemy, you're a horrible human being, I'll trash you in the media. Like, it was brotherhood first, I think. Mm-hmm. It was respect for one another and what we were trying to do, both of us, you know, from scratch. And you carried the torch and brought it across the finish line. Couldn't be prouder of you, brother. Congratulations on a well-run campaign. You went out there and you voiced opinions and gave people a voice that didn't have that before. And anybody who tackles something as large as this, I mean, there's very few people who know what it's like. I happen to be one of them. I tip my hat to you, my friend. Congratulations. Well done.
Now, Mark, once you dropped out of the race, because you had called me and you had told me you were going to go to the Ukraine. Explain to us a little bit about what was going on in your head at that point.
You know, when it came to the involvement in the Ukrainian mission and feeling compelled after we see all these things on the news, as we all did this spring, I was in a place, of course, thinking about politics, working on this campaign, you know, talking to you about these issues and talking to voters, etc. I guess I was just in like a mental headspace of thinking about, you know, what is it that we're defending? What is it that you're wanting to preserve in our nation, right? What are the founding principles? And of course, you know, I know both of us, we were poring over the early letters or early drafts of, you know, American history which is things like common sense, the Declaration of Independence, the rights of man, Constitution, preamble, all these, historical documents, reading the works of Abigail Adams and John Adams, etc. Well, of course, that puts you in a frame of mind of thinking about freedom, justice, independence, free will, ability to live your own life, chart your own course, and then you see that, oh my goodness, this isn't a study in something that happened 246 years ago. This is something that's happening right now. Yeah. And so, quite honestly, I poked my head into the political realm, and I realized that the party that I had chosen to work with was not even close to being able to pull off a local bake sale, much less a upset political campaign. And so I decided that, quite honestly, I don't think that I would have been able to get through it. And I wasn't prepared, and I'm not embarrassed to say that. I'm a big dreamer. I swung hard. I got a big bust.
What's scary is I've read your book, and I've seen the prep work you did before you decided to run. And the fact that you did all this prep work and still came back and said, you know what, this is a little different. It's kind of scary. It's kind of intimidating. The fact that you could do all this homework, you could talk to all these experts, and then once you get in, it's like, holy
And you know me, I'm a positive person. I want to go for it. I want to swing the bat and take a chance. And I want to encourage others to do that too. Right. So if anybody out there is thinking about running for political office, I am behind you 100%. It was a real gut check, man. It was a real gut check to love America as much as we do. Right. Mm-hmm. I think be as knowledgeable about the founding principles of America and want to adhere to them as closely as possible, but then also get slapped in the face with a dose of reality that the political system is broken everywhere, right? And
I tell you what, I noticed that when the results started rolling in, that I went through it without that dose of reality until those results came in, and then I was kind of like, shit, we did everything we could. We did everything right. We kicked ass in the debate, and we still didn't make it to double digits. And that was my dose of reality of going, okay, now what do we have to fix this? Because this is broken.
Well, let me ask you: do you believe, after what you've experienced? You went through the ringer the whole way, start to finish. Do you believe it is still possible to bring something better than what we have today?
I think it is, but I'm just not quite sure the best way to do it yet.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is when you look at my campaign compared to your original your campaign when you first started as a Democrat, you were getting the media, you were getting the newspaper, the TV time. I never got that the entire race.
That to me, let me tell you.
That really disturbed me after our debate performance, because I thought we did so well on that debate. Somebody would write about it. Somebody would go, "Hey, wait a minute! We haven't been paying this guy enough attention." But he showed last night he was the only one who came prepared, and not one peep of it on the media really.
Did they show that debate live, or how did people access it?
It was shown live on PBS. And then we showed link after link on it. It was on YouTube. And I tell you what, if you pull it up on YouTube for Prairie Public Broadcasting, every comment on that YouTube was saying that we kicked their butts. Okay, every one.
So, do you think that? Is the system keeping down voices that aren't the major party platform voices? What can be done to fix that?
I think right now they are keeping those voices down because they don't really. It's that what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Okay, they don't think you have a chance, so they're not going to spend print time on you. But if they don't spend print time on you, then you'll never have a chance. Yeah. So it's kind of what do we do to fix that? And you know what? I think we'll have a better picture of that sometime today, or an idea anyway. And I'll go over that a little bit more towards the end. But let me switch back to Ukraine for a minute.
Sure.
When we first talked about that you were going to go to Ukraine, you had kind of mentioned a little bit about how, you know, although you had been to the combat zone, you had never really been in the combat zone, so to speak, and you kind of felt bad about that.
Yeah.
That this was something you wanted to do to help rectify that. Can you go into that for a little bit for us?
Yeah, I think that once you dive into the realm
Not
of
to put you on the spot that way, but
No, I'm glad to answer the question, and I think it's a topic that might be of interest to those that may not know military service. Of course, that's 99% of the population, and so at any given time, there's 1% of the population serving, and that's what we go through. And so I think there is some service envy. There's some pride that comes with each service: Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, etc. Space Force, I suppose we have to include now. I've always known, when I meet a guy like you, U.S. Army service, when I meet people that have been former infantry outside the wire, I mean, we always joke right off the bat. It's like I take the insult away from you before you can use it on me. I'm from the chair force, right? I sit at a desk. I'm in Hawaii. I'm intel. I don't know how to load a weapon. That's the thing, right? And so certainly when you enlist in the United States military, no matter what branch, do you get to choose where they send you? Do you get to choose what job that you do for Uncle Sam? Not a chance, right? You make the best decisions at the recruiter's office that you possibly can, and then you salute smartly and follow orders. And I was an Air Force weenie who sat at a desk, and when I did get deployed to Afghanistan, I went there wearing sequins, doing jazz hands, entertaining the troops, right? Dude, did I ever tell you this? When we went to Afghanistan, I mean, I was I was a commander's right-hand man, first sergeant.
Yeah.
When we went to the weapons depot at I suppose that was Al Udeid, or maybe that was Ali Al Salem, I can't remember. They didn't give us rounds for our M16s. We could have just as well had baseball bats. They did not trust us with live rounds in the desert, and I'm glad they did.
You could throw sequins.
So the point being, I never deployed for a full year. In a combat situation. I was boots on the ground in the Middle East multiple times, but we were there as entertainers, like a USO show, like a Bob Hope kind of thing, and that was our mission. Yeah. Do I make fun of that and poke fun of that? And absolutely. I didn't go to the desert to fight. I went to the desert to do, dance moves, but we were lifting the morale, right?
Yeah.
And so
that is very important. Any of us who have ever deployed and been there on a long term, I mean, when these shows, stuff like that would come up, that was all anybody would talk about for the longest time, because that was the big break for us. I mean, those things are as important as anything else we would do during deployment.
And am I right? Because when you go, it makes you feel normal for a moment, right?
Yep.
And that, I think people maybe don't understand deployed environments well enough to know that you got to remember, I mean, there's not a lot of days off, if any at all. Am I correct?
Yeah, correct.
And the only thing you can do is go to the chow hall, go to work, or go to the gym or sleep. Those are your options, right?
Or we did a lot of gaming.
Hey, yeah, right? It's just something to get your mind off of war, right?
Yep.
And, I actually, maybe we'll fast forward into the Ukraine mission here real quick. One of the things that when I was over in Ukraine for 6 months, I always kept, an ear out and an eye out for was opportunities to lift people's morale, right? Mm-hmm. You think of the United States military, if you say that you're supportive of the troops, what are you supportive of? You're supportive of all aspects of military life, including on every military base, U.S. military base on Earth. There's a morale, welfare, and recreation office. We call it MWR. Maybe the different services have different names for it, but you always have an entire department dedicated to the morale, welfare, recreation, mental health, and well-being of your unit. And over in Ukraine, of course, there's people that have been experiencing traumatic situations, might have post-traumatic stress situations from the military. You're out in a trench, you're sitting in the front line, you're getting hit by artillery. That's very traumatic. But the other thing to remember is that now we have 30 plus million civilians who have been, had missiles rained down on their neighborhood. And that certainly gives that society, civilians as well, a level of trauma. I've met people that have been living in subways for 6 and 9 months because their home was destroyed, and they have trauma that I don't know, I'm not professionally certified to be able to handle. And so civilian and military alike, we put on a big band concert in Kharkiv, 10 miles away from the Russians, bringing that same USO, Bob Hope, Robin Williams, kind of entertainment to that war zone because the USO isn't operating out there. And so, I remember talking to you while I was overseas in Ukraine, and it almost felt like to me, like I'm carrying on the mission that military civilian personnel would have maybe done for us. But
Right.
now we are doing it for the people of Ukraine. I don't know, kind of a cool way to come full circle. And maybe I would not have known that was a necessary offering that was needed in the civilian community unless I would have had experience in the U.S. military. So
You
fascinating
probably
how
wouldn't
full
have.
circle.
But I think that's one of those things with Ukraine that a lot of Americans don't really appreciate is in our history, and at least in the last 120 years, Pearl Harbor is the only part of this country that has ever actually been involved in a war.
Mhm.
I mean, for the rest part, the most part, the mainland has never come across that.
Right.
Okay.
These two oceans are pretty fortunate for us.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about how that felt being on the ground. How are the Ukrainian people adapting to that? Because you can't tell me it's just they go about their day-to-day business like they normally would. Or if they are, they're a lot tougher than I would have been.
Yeah, I think I'll offer this perspective on the Ukrainian people. I would want them watching my six and as an ally any day of the week. Like if I'm going to go get in a scrap, I want a Ukrainian to have my back. Like they're a war fighting culture. They've been under siege most of their history. And, you look at the map and the geography, every major conflict that ever happened on that side of the world walked right through the middle of their country. That's a very fertile area. Natural resources abound there. And so anyway, the people of Ukraine, they're strong. They are standing in solidarity with one another. They know that victory is at hand. They don't talk about defeat. They don't talk about ceasefire. They don't talk about surrendering the Donbass. They talk about the victory. They talk about the vacation we're going to go on after we win. That's the language that you hear, unsolicited from the babushka, the young child. Everybody is on board that we're not going to let Russia make us into Russia. No way. And so that's inspiring. Number two, I would say that if you talk to a frontline soldier, I'm hearing the same things from Ukrainian frontline soldiers that I would hear from soldiers like you who were deployed in the forward area. And here's what I hear. The soldiers say, I don't want you to feel guilty for living your life, going out, having fun, enjoying your freedom, because that's what I'm fighting for. If I was out fighting for that freedom and then you were hiding and cowering in a bunker, afraid to live your life, that's not what I want, says the soldier, right? Yeah. And the civilian says, I feel guilty for being out and having fun with my friends and living life as usual. And so it's like, you see, like the civilian feels guilty for living normal life during wartime. The soldier doesn't want the civilian to feel that. And it's just like, it's just kind of heartwarming, no, I want to be polite. No, I want to be polite. No. It's kind of like Midwestern nice, Minnesota nice, right? It's like everybody knows what they're involved in. Everybody knows that there's sense of urgency because your brother, your uncle, your neighbor, your cousin is out on the front lines getting hit by artillery. And everybody knows at this point in the war, if you don't take a day off, if you don't rest and restore your soul, if you don't unplug every once in a while, the trauma and the stress will overcome you and you'll crumble. And then you don't do any good to anybody. See, these are familiar themes in our military, right? You're no good to anybody, dead, right? Yeah. You have to come to the battle with a full tank. And it's interesting, me seeing the civilian population understand now for the first time the rhythm of war. Yeah. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your experiences having been in those zones. Like, what happens to you? What is the routine? Do you settle into a routine every once in a while, or are you always on edge? Give people an insight into what life maybe the Ukrainians are feeling right now in a war zone.
I tell you what, from my personal experience, again, I was a finance guy, so I was definitely a fobbit. We were my second deployment. We were sitting in Bakuba, Iraq, and I mean, for majority of us, now we did have a lot of people who were going outside the wire, doing pay missions across the area. Yeah. My happy butt was usually stuck dealing with the contractors back in the FOB. But yeah, we would definitely there was definitely a battle rhythm you'd get into. Yeah. And I mean, it was literally you hear the anti-air guns going off at night, going right over your chew. And by the third night, you didn't even hear them anymore. Yeah. They were just like, they were a part of the normal environment. And after about 3-4 weeks or a month, if you heard something for incoming, you just laid in your bunk, said, if it's my time to go, it's my time to go. Okay. I'm not right. I mean, you get a certain amount of disassociation from the danger. But
I want to pick up on that if I can. Can I jump in right there?
By all means, man.
I think it is fascinating because I saw that out inside the wire. Folks, I was never outside the wire while deployed in the military. I was always inside the base, right? And so I would talk to guys like you who had been there on station for months and months. And, you know, us, the very first time we hear an air raid siren, like we're diving for the bunkers, right? Yeah. We're like freaking out, trying to adhere to procedure. And then I see you, asshole, just walking across, in your PT shorts, going to the chow hall,
probably with a cigarette in your mouth.
Isn't it fascinating what the human spirit can endure and adapt to? And it almost, while I had been over there, and it sounds like you've seen it too, it's like it becomes the new normal. Yeah. And you're not as freaked out. It's still as dangerous as the first time, but isn't that an interesting, experiment in the adaptability of humans under the most intense circumstances?
Yep. Now, Mark, tell me a little bit about what your mission has been, what you've taken kind of upon yourself to do. Because I know when you left for Ukraine, you were like, dude, I have no clue what I'm going to do when I get there. All I'm doing is showing up and we'll see what needs to get done.
And that was my mindset and mentality the whole time. I'm not going to know how I can help until I get there. Because, okay, where did you deploy to Iraq? Which base?
Bakuba.
Say again?
Bakuba.
Okay, so before you got there, I'll bet you had all kinds of ideas of what it was going to be like. But fast forward 2 weeks of you being there on station, with your guys in your unit. I mean, you probably could have gone back to your original ideas and not a one of them was correct, right? Yeah. Because you don't know. Nope. It's a foreign country. They don't speak the language, different customs, wartime. You're just not going to know how you can help until you get there. And so I was open-minded about it. Of course, I wanted to help the orphans. I started out life in an orphanage in Seoul, South Korea. I wanted to help those kids as much as I could. But the scenario on the ground was those orphans are already, being taken care of by the state. And so it's just like we always do. You get there. You assess the conditions on the ground. You develop a mission plan. You predict the mission probability of success, and the ones that you think are going to fail, you don't attempt, right? And you just try to do as much good as you possibly can, given the team that you've assembled randomly of Westerners. And what we ended up finding out was medical supplies was the major need over there, because we were sending guys out into the trenches that didn't have tourniquets, didn't have first aid kits, didn't have a nasopharyngeal tube to their name, didn't have a tourniquet, didn't have chest seals. I mean, chest seals are like gold over there. You don't see them. They're so rare. We wouldn't imagine going outside the wire without that kind of gear. These guys are headed out in March and April with hoodies on. They should have had level 4 body armor. They're wearing tactical baseball caps, right?
Yeah.
And so it was easy for us to say, well, if that's what they lack, and I just met a guy yesterday who was an accountant yesterday, and now he's wearing camo today. As a fellow military member, how can you not do everything you can to get that guy a set of body armor, non-lethal aid? He's fighting for our freedom. So that's what we did for 6 months, as well as support the civilian hospitals with medical supplies.
Now, where did the funding come for all this? I mean,
me and my friends on a GoFundMe.
Money drives the world.
What's that?
Let's face it, money drives the world.
Oh yeah.
Without money, nothing happens.
You need the resources to be able to buy the things that the Ukrainian soldiers need, that governments and armies are even struggling to provide. I get the question all the time: why are we sending so much money over to Ukraine? We have other help that needs to be given here. Yes, I totally understand that. That's a very easy throwaway line to be persuasive that we shouldn't send any more to Ukraine. Let me tell you this: you stand up a 1 million-man army in 6 months on private donations. You stand up a 1 million-man army in 6 months on government funding. It's almost an impossible task to take 800,000 civilians who were working an office job yesterday and make them into well-equipped soldiers in the period of 6 months. I mean, it takes us, America, 6 months to build up for war, right?
Yep.
And so in the meantime, we didn't have 6 months to wait. The artillery barrage was happening now. So we couldn't wait for governments and armies to get their shit together. We had to bring it across the border, one van at a time. And let me tell you, the 2-star general that sits across the table with me in Kyiv, and we have a working relationship, he told me to tell the Americans, were it not for the Western support that poured into the country in March and April, we would not have been able to supply the front, the zero in the first lines with what they needed. It was the Western support that helped. And so we involved ourselves in that effort as soon as we can, running vans out to the Donbass, getting requests from the frontline units and what they needed. And I didn't care if they needed maybe I didn't have anything to deliver that day. You know what I did? I went to the grocery store and I bought $200 worth of energy drinks because these guys are sleeping 3 hours a night in a trench, and you know how much you need a good energy drink.
Yeah.
when on shift, right? And so we just tried to help however we can. The mission continues. I hope to be able to help more. And so what a ride. I've been inspired to work alongside the Ukrainian partners, and I know any American veteran would be proud to have them as brothers and sisters in arms as well. So just proud to have done it. Of course, life could have taken a completely different trajectory, but what the hell, man? Sometimes you find yourself at the brink of World War III, and you're like, well, what the hell? I'm just going to do this. And I feel good about it, and I think we helped a lot of people.
Now, do you have any more fundraising events coming up to support that mission, Mark?
Yeah, and that's what I'm back here doing is, of course, I'm a public speaker, and I can, gather an audience of Kiwanis Lions, Rotary Church people, Chamber of Commerce. I don't care. Your Aunt Ethel, have her make a hot dish. I'll come over and tell your family and friends on your block about Ukraine. I don't care. My whole mission is to come back in one small audience at a time, like these opportunities, news interviews, whatever. Tell the story about Ukraine so that people don't forget about what's going on over there. Because my goodness, don't you see the similarities of their struggle for freedom and ours? I mean, do I really need to sit here and try to convince people that they should support people who are struggling for freedom like we did 241 years ago? Like, come on. Like, to me, it's very clear. And do I want to fix America in the mess that the government is? Yes. But that might be a lifetime of work. Right now, I got Ukrainian buddies out there that are getting hit by artillery shells. And I think that my time and energy and effort is well placed in this mission. And, I don't know if you want to take this podcast this way, but I think that maybe is a segue into what you're doing, in the future here about, certainly there still is work to be done here in America. You're doing that. I'm doing this. We're coming together and supporting each other. I think it's beautiful. I'm proud of what you're doing, man.
Yeah. Hey, do you have any major events you want to tell people about? I remember last time you were here, we went up there and you did a Frank Sinatra style show up in Fargo. That was just, I mean, it was great to see you up there because again, we dealt with each other on kind of a personal note. That was the first time I've seen you in full entertainer mode.
Yeah. that was me going balls to the wall, man. Sequins, gold and blue sequins like the Ukrainian flag.
Where did you find a big band is what I want to know.
Oh, that's the band I've been playing with for 8 years. You know, they're local guys. They're music professors, and they were kind enough to donate their time to the cause. Yeah. And we pulled together a 17-piece big band. I've got a few events coming up right off the top of my head that, you know, okay. I know they're throughout December. Watch my Facebook page, and we'll be doing speeches at churches, all pro bono work for Ukraine. You know, you can keep in touch there. But yeah, just scheduling as many of those as I can. Public events telling the story. And if anybody's interested in how to help or they want to help, you know, get in touch with me. Just find me, Mark J. Lindquist, on social media, and we'll tell you how to help the Ukrainian people this winter.
Yeah, I tell you what, Mark, I mean, one of the things I love about what you're doing is of course, I'm a libertarian at heart, which basically means, man, I don't want the government paying for crap. But what you're doing is you're making this huge difference off of people volunteering to send you money to make this difference.
Yeah.
They're choosing to get involved. They're choosing, so you know what? I think we need to help the Ukrainian people. They are making that conscious choice to help over the government saying this is where we are going to send all the taxpayers' money. Yeah. Because of course, that's one of the things I learned from my campaign is especially here in Western Minnesota, $50 billion or $60 billion going to Ukraine is a hard pill for a lot of Western Minnesotans to swallow.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if you don't have proper accountability, because I know that was one of the things Tom Massey tried to insert when they were sending this money in is, hey, we want an inspector general here who can verify where this money is going and that it is helping, and was basically told no. What would you tell me? Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you. Here's my perspective on spending money on Ukraine or not. I have thought since the very beginning that this was very reminiscent of 80 years ago on this continent. Largest ground war in Europe's continent since, you know, the 1940s, late 30s. Largest humanitarian and refugee crisis since World War II. Same atrocities going on in that part of the world that happened at the death camps in Auschwitz and Dachau, etc. We've seen this movie before. Here's the point. I don't think people know that the debt that was owed, the bill that needed to be paid for World War II 80 years ago, America, to build the planes and the tanks, it cost us $341 billion. $341 billion. Only 48% of that money, less than half, came from tax revenue. Did you know? I certainly didn't know until I stumbled across this stat. Did you know that 52% of the bill to pay for World War II came from war bonds? 52% of America, 52% of the bill, $180 billion. People put their savings aside to give the United States government money to build these tanks and these planes. And the people contributed $180 billion, or today that would be over, I think it's over $2 trillion of today's dollars that we contributed because of the cause of freedom. The war, yes, did visit our front door in Pearl Harbor, but it was happening on the European continent. It was happening on the other side of the world. And we pitched in because of the cause of freedom. Because of the rights of man. And so it is my message that, yes, you think $70-80 billion is a lot of money, because to you, the citizen, that's a lot of money. To a government in the Pentagon, that's a rounding error.
It's sad, but it's true.
We have blown more money at the Pentagon if you add up everything. See, here's the incorrect thing. Oh, I'm getting on my soapbox now. I'm sorry.
Remember, I'm a finance guy, so I've seen it.
Let me tell you. If we always say that the Pentagon spends $700 billion, $800 billion because that's the defense authorization that we hear. But then you have to also count the State Department. Of course, that's diplomatic. But of course, that is averting war. Diplomatically, you have to think of the billions we spend on nuclear. We have to think of the billions that we spend on homeland security, the billions that we spend on intelligence, the untold billions on intelligence, maybe trillions, who knows, right? If you add all that stuff, nuclear weapons programs, it's over like $1.2 trillion, $1.2 trillion, not 700 billion, 1.2 trillion.
And they had their contingency operation slush fund, which was going on forever.
Oh,
that was not part of the budget, not accounted for.
And so it's like, you think that $70 billion is a lot, but they spend that in a month over at the Pentagon, right? And so understand what we're involved in right now. We're involved in, I believe, the most important question of our generation is, are we going to let the world's dictatorships take over the world? Do your research. In the last few years, I'm talking, I don't know, I actually can't remember if the study is the last 3 years or 10 years. I don't know what it is. But there's more autocracies and dictatorships in the world than there were, 5 years ago. I think it's up from 25 to 30 autocracies, closed autocracies. And I think that democracies, open democracies, are down from something like 44 to 36 or something, 42 to 36. We're losing ground in freedom. Yep. And it's happening right in front of our eyes in Ukraine. And I don't think the world knows that.
Where my frustration personally comes in is, again, I'm a finance guy, so I'm a numbers guy. So when I look at what our contribution is compared to what most of the other European countries' contribution is, I mean, we're contributing more to the war in Ukraine than all these other countries combined. And when you talk about the European Union, their economy is every bit as big and strong as ours is. Why is our contributions dwarfing what their contributions are for something on their front door? Because that's the thing is, if Russia goes through Ukraine, where they're going next? They're going through Europe.
Okay, so through
why
Poland.
Are we the ones carrying the lion's share of that? That's my question. My concern is, hey, this is on your doorstep. This is, and I hate to put it this way, but this is a European issue. Why are y'all not leading the way and calling on us for additional support rather than calling on us as the prime support?
I do understand what you're saying, and I do think that everybody should pull their own weight. And I haven't done the numbers of GDP to percentage given. I don't know if it's if we're if our 70 billion is X percentage. I don't know if other countries are the same. Whatever. The point being this, my point being this, is that I look at the scenario like this, is that if it's the game Risk, there's this color soldier and there's this color soldier. This color soldier is for autocracy and dictatorship. This color soldier is for freedom and independence, right? And so I look at it as, look at the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991. Look at the very simple example of Ukraine versus Belarus. Belarus and Ukraine went different directions, right? Belarus seems to be friendly with Russia, seems to be, more of the autocracy, dictatorship kind of government's going to tell you how to live your life thing. Ukraine totally went, now to a Western, well, they've been struggling, along their way for 30 years to live a Western life. And so in my estimation, if you think back to, lands conquered, territories in Roman empires, throughout history, etc. Like, how much land and how many people, where is freedom's territory? How much land does freedom occupy? How much territory does freedom occupy? Well, freedom's territory is Ukraine. Whose responsibility is that but the original sponsor of freedom, the United States of America? Right?
Well,
that's my perspective, is
yeah,
that we're on the same team.
But if we look at the U.S., because you mentioned the USSR, and of course the USSR fell.
Yeah.
Most people still don't understand why they fell. And the reason they fell is because they got into a spending war with the United States. And their production could not keep up with the amount of money they were spending on defense to try to keep up with us. My concern is now that script is starting to change. It's starting to flip. Is now Russia is trying to see how much dollars it can get the United States to spend to see if it causes them to fall upon itself, just like the USSR did. I mean, if you look at what our debt is now compared to our GDP, is our debt actually eclipsed our GDP, which has always been kind of a red line for economics. Is, hey, if your debt ends up going above your GDP, you got real issues, and we've blown by that number last year. So that's always going to be a concern of mine, and of course that's part of the reason I'm in the political platform that I am, is because I'm like, hey, we need to do something about the spending. But at the same time, I realize that if the Russians aren't stopped here, it's going to cost more money later.
Yeah, they're not easy. You know, we're backed into a corner here. This is being thrust upon us.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, because you're a finance guy.
Yep.
So what do you think about debt and deficits? Do deficits matter?
I firmly believe they do. I am not a fan of this new, what is it, modern monetary theory of credit.
MMT.
I think we're seeing the results of that mindset right now with our rising inflation, because like any other supply and demand, the more you supply, the less value it has. And I think that's kind of what we're looking at right now. And for the last 5 or 10 years, the Fed has been basically printing money to loan out at 0% interest rates to keep the economy humming, and basically the bills come due. And so I definitely think and me and another buddy of mine have this argument all the time. They're like, hey, just print more money. Well, no, that's what got us into this situation to begin with, in my mind anyway, is because for the longest time, the U.S. dollar has been the benchmark around the world.
Right.
And we're starting to lose that now.
If it's the global reserve currency, I mean, this could be a whole podcast, this whole thing. We could spend 4 hours on this whole rabbit hole, and probably nobody would be listening at the end of it because it's too heady for the average person. Economics.
And I definitely do not consider myself the economic scholar that it seems like lately a majority of the Libertarian Party seems to be. But
yeah, you know, so when it comes to that, when it comes to spending, obviously, I'm a 41-year-old high school graduate. I'm always just trying to figure out how these things work on my own, and maybe I don't grasp it yet today. But my feeling has been, and question always has been, well, do deficits matter? You know, you look at, over the past, I suppose, 40, 50 years, if you look at government spending and deficits, we've been running deficits all but about 4 or 5 years. There was late 90s with the surplus and a couple of years maybe here and there. But for the most part, it's been deficit spending. And then some say deficits don't matter. I'm a person, in my meager understanding of how these levers get pulled and turned and how they work on a global scale at economics, I'm wondering if they do matter. Look at what we just did. We can move the decimal point, and all of a sudden, what did we spend during the pandemic? $10 trillion or something like that. And of course, now we're seeing inflation and we're seeing supply chain issues. Maybe that was the cause of it all. But my point being, if we're arguing about $70 billion, that's nothing.
No, not when you look at the overall.
That does not bankrupt America.
Yeah. Not when you look at the trillions and trillions of dollars we spend and waste every year. I mean, people just don't. And again, coming from the military side, I mean, there's just. And here's some of the things that I look at just from solely on Department of Defense aspect. You probably have a general idea of what these generals are getting paid. they're getting paid stupidly high amounts of money. You know, since World War II, we had one general for every 6,000 soldiers.
Okay.
Now we have one for every 1,500.
Sure.
We have 4 times the amount of per capita generals getting paid those big dollars. Now, guess what? Each one of those generals have their own staffs.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, so let's just start doing some of that math there.
Yeah.
You look at the number of enlisted compared to the number of officers. Now, people think about that and go, yeah, you should have probably 20 to 30 to 1. No, we are pretty close to like 2 to 1. I mean, just enough. Okay. So there's a lot of places where the Army or the military can get a lot more efficient and save a lot of dollars. Because guess what? Every one of those generals end up retiring, and now you're paying them 50 to 75% of that money for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you look at somebody like me who retired as a sergeant first class, and my retirement of basically $2,000 a month compared to their retirement of 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 grand a month for the rest of their lives. I mean, there's a lot of places where you could come up with that 60 or 70 billion just in Department of Defense savings if you actually did this the way you should be doing. Look at the money we spent just for having soldiers in Germany. Is there really a reason for us to have soldiers in Europe anymore? Every one of those soldiers are paid, and they're also given a cost of living allowance to help them keep up to that standard there.
Yes.
Well, whose economy is that money supporting? Not ours. It's supporting the European economy. So we're sending those dollars to be spent somewhere else where these same soldiers can be stationed here, spending money here on American businesses who are paying American taxes on it. For what reason? I mean, I know there's some that like Korea. Okay, and you know what? I fully understand kind of having a lot of these soldiers in Korea.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just don't understand the size of our footprint in the European Union anymore, considering the level that those economies are at and the modernity of those societies. We should not be having to defend Europe anymore.
Yeah.
After 70 years from the last war, it's time to cut the tethers. It's kind of let the children go out and support themselves now. Without
I think, now you're getting into, the new world order that was created after World War II and the powers that be, how we became a superpower post, was it the Potsdam Agreement or whatever ended World War II? Now I'm really looking foolish. I don't know the names of the thing. But, my point being like that was the order that was established after World War II. And we emerged as a superpower. Cold War ended supposedly in 91. And here we are, America on top of the world in every way. And it's almost like, well, we made our bed. Now we got to sleep in it. If we were the ones that took off and started to spend trillions of dollars on defense, we're the world's police. We're the ones that have the hardware. We're the ones that have the defense contracts. And I would say that although I am on the same board as, same page as you with all these personnel and all of their retirement, etc., the real bill that we could trim the fat with is, contracts like the F-35. You've heard me rant about that before, or different weapon systems and government contracts. Use it or lose it spending at the Pentagon. Why is there use it or lose it spending? Take that language and verbiage out. There's definitely ways that we could scrimp and save another 60, 70 billion here and there and give it to our allies so that the fight doesn't show up on our front door.
Here's part of my complaints on a lot of this is, if you look at the money and I'm going to use Israel. Hopefully I don't get called an anti-Semite because of this. We send Israel $3 billion a year in military aid. Israel won't vote the way we need them to vote sometimes. They do their own thing. They do what's best for Israel, which I understand. Mm-hmm. But if they're going to be so independent, then they need to be independent and not count on us for giving them $3 billion a year to assist in their national defense. I mean, we pay more for foreign military sales for Israel than I think a majority of the other countries combined. I mean, and what are we getting out of it? Have you ever, in your deployments or wherever you've been, have you ever seen an Israeli soldier in there with the Americans?
I guess I haven't. No.
No. You've seen like every other Middle Eastern country, but you've never seen in Israel. Israel has not sacrificed one Israeli drop of blood to help the United States, yet they are kind of the sacred cow you can't touch when it comes down to defense spending, or
yeah.
leaving them. People don't realize that in espionage, Israel is ranked third as far as conducting espionage against the United States. Russia and China are the only two countries that perform more espionage missions in the United States than Israel does. Yet we're giving them $3 billion a year every year plus for their defense.
Yeah, I guess it's a difference of opinion of what is America's role in the world, right?
Yeah.
What is the Pentagon and the State Department's role on Earth's footprint? And my perspective, don't know if it's right or wrong, happens to be what I believe today at least, is as I travel throughout Europe, and I suppose I'll speak specifically about Europe, is that part of the world is waiting for America to determine their future, right? They know they don't have the resources, the Defense Department. They know they don't have what it takes to stand up to an enemy like Russia. And so it is my opinion, as I talk to these people, it's like they're just waiting for America to decide whether they're worth saving or not. Mm-hmm. And I was taught, like, if you can help, you must, right? If they're our friends, if they're our allies, and they will perish without us, I mean, what good is all this military might if we don't stand up to tyranny when it rears its ugly head? And we could go back and forth all day long whether Biden is doing this correctly or not. You could make an argument either way, I'm sure.
You know what?
I think that if we're going to have this capability, it is our responsibility to use it to make sure that people don't get annihilated like we're seeing right now. They're civilians, for goodness sakes. Right. I don't want to escalate to World War III any more than the other guy. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm trying to be a voice for my civilian buddy out there with their grandma getting hit by a Grad missile.
Yeah. And I think we need to keep one of the things that I think makes Ukraine different than a lot of the other situations and a lot of the other areas we spend a crap load of money with is Ukraine is in a situation they're in because of an aggressor.
Yeah.
They didn't go out and pick a fight, although a lot of people are like, well, yeah, but they didn't want to do things. Why do you want Ukraine to bow down to Russia when y'all would never, ever want the United States to do the same thing? Okay, and that is a lot of the arguments of, well, they should just do what Russia wants them to. No, because you wouldn't want us doing just what Russia wants to. Why do you want them to? Okay, it just so I understand that point, and I have the issue of over the last 10 years, my whole mentality on a lot of this has changed. I mean, when I was a soldier, okay, you know what? I was if I had to qualify myself, I'd probably say I was a neocon. And I mean, and as I've gotten a little bit older, and as I've gotten a little bit of separation between no longer being in, I'm starting to see things from a little bit different angle. And I guess that's why they say all soldiers are young, because when they're older, they're smart enough not to do it.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. As they get older, they're a little bit more intelligent. When they're young and stupid and think they're indestructible, that they want to do that. But yeah, so my mindset and I'll be honest, Ukraine has torn me. Okay, because at the one hand, I'm like, hey, we need to bring all of our stuff back. We need to fix what's at home first. But dang, anytime you see a small kid getting bullied on the school ground, you want to go in there and do something.
Right.
Okay. And that's kind of how I see what's going on with Ukraine and Russia. Is Ukraine's the little kid on the playground, and Russia's the bully. And there's that part of me that just wants to go out there and punch that bully right smack dab in the nose. And I mean, and to a certain extent, we're helping Ukraine and we're sending them all this money, but we're also tying their hands. We're telling them, you know what, don't hit inside of Russia. You want Russia to stop? You start hitting them inside of Russia. Okay, start involving the Russian people like you've gotten the Ukrainian people involved, and then now all of a sudden they have question and answer at home. But that's up to Ukraine. We shouldn't be telling Ukraine one way or the other, do this or don't do that. But yeah, I mean, Ukraine is just it's such a mess, and it just and I know, say, from running, I mean, that was always something I heard out on the campaign trail was, we don't want our money going to Ukraine because it's just going to start World War III. But at the same time, if you let Russia keep doing what Russia wants to do, will they ever stop until you force them to stop? And when you decide to force them to stop, are you now the only one left to do it?
Well, I think it's a question of, are these entities legitimate? NATO, UN, EU, and these agreements of security guarantees, when Ukraine gave up their nuclear program for a security guarantee, like, what does that mean? What does one's word mean on the global stage these days? My question
look
being
China and Taiwan and Hong Kong.
You're right. Oh, that's a whole nother bag of words.
Okay, same damn thing.
Right?
I mean, they gave their word, but two systems, one country, and yeah.
And I think back to the old classic argument, which has to be addressed, of we have problems here, let's solve them first. Why are we sending money to Ukraine? My question is, why does everything have to be either or, right? Look at where we were 80 years ago. So take yourself through the progression of the 1930s in America. That wasn't such a great time, right? Mm-hmm. The Great Depression. And did we say, no, we can't help those poor, Jewish people over there in Europe because we need to fix what's going on in America first? No, we didn't do that. We said, look at this injustice. We have come out of we're still in a Great Depression. It's still rough, but yet we understand that if there's going to be a voice for freedom on earth, if there's going to be someone to keep the torch lit through dark times such as this, that it must be America. And Churchill pled for that and finally got FDR's involvement. Of course, it took Pearl Harbor. But, I mean, what do we stand for in the United States of America? Are we the country that says, well, it can be shitty everywhere else, but we're just going to take care of our own? We're the richest country on earth. We're going to spend $800 billion on Christmas this year. Almost $1 trillion. What the fuck? We can't spend a little on a country who deserves to be protected as per the security agreement that we signed with them when we took their nukes? We
didn't do that security agreement. Russia did. Okay, we did not. We were not a party of that. We have no legal obligation. Now, do we have a moral obligation? That's one question. But do we have a legal obligation? No, we do not have a legal obligation. They're not a part of NATO. We do not have a mutual defense pact with Ukraine. So we don't have a legal obligation. Do we have a moral one? Very possibly. Okay.
Yes.
But we don't have the legal one. And I do want to draw that line there of, hey, we don't have a legal obligation to do it.
And I didn't have a legal obligation to go serve over there these last 6 months. Sometimes you don't need to be compelled to do the right thing.
Exactly. You chose to. You said, you know what, this is what's right. I believe in this. I'm going to go do this. But the question, and this is what really is the question of libertarianism to a certain extent, is how much authority do you have to make that decision for somebody else?
I would probably have no authority. I think that.
Yeah, but when you send our tax dollars there, you are committing somebody else's labor to who earned that money that the government took to go
All
there
right.
and do that. Okay, that's kind of the heart of libertarianism is you're basically threatening by force, you're going to do this, we're going to take a portion of that money you earned, and
Yep.
we're going to decide where to send it. That is the whole heart of the libertarian argument of voluntarism is, yeah, you know what? We agreed on this. We, as you said, war bonds. Why couldn't you do the same thing for Ukraine? You know what? Let's not take tax dollars. Let's do war bonds to support this. And if you want to say I stand with Ukraine, stroke your check.
Right. Then it's all voluntary, right? And
Exactly.
yes, I will make that distinction. I'm with you 100%.
Yeah.
That maybe it is not a clear answer that yes, we should dedicate tax dollars. You know, I just want to make the case that we should dedicate.
And that's why I wanted to spread the difference between legal and moral. If it was a legal requirement, we had a treaty, we need to honor our treaties.
Sure.
Period. 100%. Sure. We haven't done it in the past. We've screwed over the first Americans time and time again by not honoring our treaties, and that's a stain on our country's honor. So I do believe we must honor any treaty that we enter, even if I don't agree with it. My elected representatives voted to enter into that treaty. Well, they were my representatives. If I didn't like it, I should have fired them.
Sure. Wish it was that easy.
Let me get off my soapbox.
No, I am obviously a strong advocate for more aid. Where that aid comes from, I don't care if it's NGOs, a local rich oil baron. I don't care if it's the people via war bonds or via the federal government, right? I will advocate for every and beg, borrow, and steal for every penny I can get for these people because that's my position
here on the show.
What's that?
Which is why I wanted you on the show so you can give that perspective. Let's face it, the average American, the average Minnesotan does not have a clue to what's actually going on there. I mean, I don't think people can really fathom what's going on with the bombing of all these civilian infrastructure. I mean, of them hitting, I mean, it's coming up to a Minnesota winter. Can you imagine the infrastructure, your heating systems, your propane storage areas being bombed every few days where you didn't know how you were going to heat your home and keep your family from freezing to death? I don't think people really understand. And that's the game Russia's playing. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
They're not competing against, they're not fighting the Ukrainian soldiers. Because why? Because they're getting their ass kicked. So what they're trying to do is they are bringing their war directly to the Ukrainian people, but Ukraine is being forbidden from the United States government from returning the favor. Not that I think it should ever be done, but if you want somebody not to treat you a certain way, you sometimes have to show them how it feels.
Yeah, it's, Russia knows full well that winter is the best weapon in their arsenal, right? They're trying to black out the country and make it unlivable. That's their strategy. Bomb the hell out of a village, wait until there's nothing but the babushkas left, and then march in and call it Russia, right? And so if you turn the power out on people in winter in a place that's the same latitude as International Falls, Minnesota, although the European continent is a little warmer than ours, it still gets down to the teens at night. And you stand next to the Black Sea with wind chill this winter, wet and cold, right?
Yeah. Kind of
the
right
power
off the
in
Great
Kyiv
Lakes.
is only on 30% of the time. My friends over there who are trying to work virtual jobs, because it is an advanced technological environment with people working virtual jobs for American companies during the day. How do you work a virtual job if your power's on 20 to 30% of the time, and in the other time you're trying to figure out how to keep warm when it's 20 degrees out, right? I'm talking about help. At least help those people, for crying out loud.
At least they can be thankful they don't have electric cars.
Well, they do have electric cars, and that's what people don't know. People don't know that there are Teslas on the road over there, that they drive Chevys and Fords, that they drive EVs, they have Wi-Fi. We use Uber, we get Uber Eats, I go to Airbnbs, I get food delivery. This is the Western world, folks. I operate over there just like I do in America. The only thing that's different is that I have to speak a different language over there. This is the Western world. This is a product of American freedom keeping the torch lit through the 1800s when the world's population only saw 2% of us enjoying democracy, and then we've grown it to over half the world. Part of that is Ukraine.
Yep.
We sponsored this democracy. We kept that light lit on planet Earth through the 1800s when freedom didn't have a chance. America stuck its flag in the ground and said, you know what? I think that people should have rights. People that modeled our Bill of Rights after the Bill of Rights in England in the 1600s, and that before that it was the Magna Carta. These principles have been fought for 800, 900 thousands of years, yep. Right? And we kept it going. Now, because, I mean, if America had not kept freedom's light going for the last couple centuries, would Ukraine have had a blueprint post-Soviet Union? Would the Soviet Union have broken up were America not alive on Earth? Right? Yep. To me, Ukraine is our stepchild, right? Don't take that the wrong way. There's someone that we helped.
Not redheaded stepchild, is it?
We helped. Do you see what I'm saying? Like freedom, the concept is what they're living off of today because America might have been a sponsor of it, right? What if King George would have beaten America and a monarchy would have continued and there would have never been the United States of America to fight for these things? Do we not feel a responsibility to those like France felt a responsibility to us in the 1700s to send Marquis de Lafayette to fight for our freedom? France didn't have to do that.
That wasn't solely for our freedom. It was also to stick a thumb in the eye of the British. Okay, let's be honest with that.
It's the same thing here.
Those two countries have been at war forever, and anything to piss the British off, the French were all for.
So when John Adams and I believe Ben Franklin and probably Thomas Jefferson made it over to France to appeal for aid,
it was Ben Franklin majority.
They gave. We are. France had been around for 800 years at the time. Yep. They were military might, and we asked them for help. That's Ukraine asking America for help today. It's the same scenario.
Yep.
And so I
think the American people need to make that decision and support Ukraine because I think it's the right thing to do. But I think the American people need to do it. I mean, but they need to decide to do it.
Yeah.
And if you start doing more of that, then all of a sudden there's less demand on the federal government to do it. I mean, it's kind of my point for most things nowadays is charity, spending money on charity is down. Why? Because the government takes care of it. You don't have to. I pay my taxes, so I don't have to take care of the poor. That's what you have Social Security for. That's what we're paying the government to do. And people have lost that sense of my responsibility because they put it all on the government, and then they complain about what the government does when you're the one who gave them all the authority. So you didn't have to.
Yeah.
Let me switch gears for a minute here, Mark.
Yeah.
Earlier when we were talking about our politics, you had mentioned that the original party you had started to go with, you saw that they weren't going to be prepared to do what they needed to do.
Not even close.
Let's go into that a little bit more. What brought you along that path? And if you could share as well what they told you from the fundraising perspective, I think people would get a real good kick out of that.
Oh, absolutely. So, as you've gone through this process, trying to make the decision, is this the right thing for me? Should I run? Am I a viable candidate? What's it going to take? What's my plan, etc. I started talking to some of the folks that advised Vice President Harris, Cory Booker, all these big names, President Biden, in the Democratic circle. And I started talking to them, and I realized that, that's the NFL, right? That's two major parties, and I'm talking to one of them. And I'm not only talking to the party, I'm talking to the party stars, right? And I was very fortunate to have those conversations. I didn't probably deserve that. Who am I? I'm an idiot who says I want to help and run. And I was able to get in some of those conversations. And I realized that it doesn't matter which party you choose today. They're all broken. The system is without any redeeming quality whatsoever. They want you to raise $3 million and buy your way into office, right? Well, if you're going to do that, before you even cross the starting line, you've already just given up all of your morals, right? You've already sold out to the system, and you've already tied yourself to so many favors to rich people you don't even know. And that's what really caused me to say, you know what, forget it. You guys are not playing by my morals. Because before I could even announce my intention to run, and I really do have an independent heart, you know, I really did mull over the decision long and hard. Gosh, I really want to run as an independent and change the country. But it seems to me that maybe if I am being offered, you know, Cory Booker and President Biden and Vice President Harris's advisors, maybe I should go with them. Rookie mistake. Didn't know what the hell I was doing. Get into their realm, and I realized, oh, I see what you've done. Before I even announced to the public what I'm going to do, what my vision is, how it might be different, how I might capture the attention of the voting public, you've already tried to tie me to donors that are bundled, you know that term, bundling donors.
Yep.
You've already tried to bundle donors from a U.S. senator, and I don't have any idea where that money came from and what I'm owed. What you're tying me to a promise that I don't even know that you made for me. And then I would go to these events for the party, and the same 8 people would show up, whether I was down in the southern part of the district or the northern. And it was like, okay, this is not something that is going to be worth my energy and effort, because I mean, we've got to go from 30% to 51. I don't think I can make up 21% if the same 8 people keep showing up at all these events. I might be a crowd pleaser, but I can't. It's going to be a waste of my time. Yep. This party is not equipped in this region, this district, to mount a campaign that I could believe in.
Yep.
And so I said, if I'm going to do something with my time, I want to make it fruitful. So I took off for Ukraine.
See, and Mark, and I'm glad you brought it up, and I'm glad you worded it that way, because it's a great segue to what I'm going to talk about. What I wanted to talk about next is just like you had that issue with the DFL in this district. I see that being the GOP problem in the state. They don't understand how.
Yeah.
With that, they don't understand how to win a statewide election. They don't spend time where the people are, which is in the cities. They keep on thinking they can win a statewide election in the greater Minnesota area, and you can't do that. But at the same time, both of those parties are just so in the back pocket of the corporations that's who all the priorities are. I mean, that's on my intro. It's always talking about there is no money in staying out of war. There is no money on ending the drug war. That's the money that keeps these political parties going. And I guess this is as good a place as any to announce what I've been working on. And it's going to piss a lot of people off, and I'm sorry. Especially my libertarian friends. But I no longer feel that my path and the Libertarian Party path are the same path. I don't feel like we're going in the same direction anymore. They want to put their priorities in a different place, and their messaging is different than the messaging I believe in. And you know what? I wish them luck. I think they're great. I think they're probably needed. However, we have started the groundwork to forming a new political party. We went ahead and registered our name with the state as well as the United States Trademark Office as the Constitutional Republic Party.
Awesome.
It's a matter of trying to get back to the original view that the founding fathers had with a limited federal government.
Limit that, baby. Limit it all over the place.
It's acknowledging that, yes, we do need a government, but it should be as small as possible to do what's been assigned by the Constitution, and that's it. There's a certain branch within or certain subsection within the libertarians who don't believe in any government, and I feel that the message gets diluted sometimes if you're a minarchist, which is more what I am compared to the anarchist. And it confuses people. And I look at how this election went as far as your libertarians are concerned. they made a big difference in some races, like the Senate district in Georgia, but at the same time, they got 1 or 2%. I mean, as far as I know from the research I've done, I did much better running as a party candidate than the Libertarian Party did in any federal or governor race this year.
Well done.
Like doubled. I mean, we were 5.5%, where a majority of those were 2 and 3%. So I just want, my feeling is after 50 years, if the LP cannot be counted on to get more than 4 or 5% in a race, it might be time to change your horse. And that's kind of where we decided to go on. It's going to upset a lot of people, I know. And honestly, a lot of this is going to depend on what happens today. Today's a big day, and people don't realize it. Today is the state convention for the GOP. They're going to elect their new chair today, or their old chair. And if they do maintain their old chair, a lot of the Ron Paul type grassroots Republicans are going to feel that they still don't have a voice within the GOP, and they're going to be looking for a new home.
Yeah. And
we're hoping that we're going to be able to provide some of that. We're still a long way away from it. We're just organizing our organizing committee. We're trying to get a lot of people from different perspectives onto this committee. I know we've got one of our person who's probably going to be our secretary is actually coming from one of the tribes. She's on one of the tribal councils, because we definitely want the Native American voice in this party. We're looking for people from the inner city. Say, hey, how is this going to work for you? We want you involved from day one, step one, with developing this party, to ensure that we develop a party that's going to work for the people in the cities. That's the only way we're gonna overcome the DFL on the state level.
Sure.
If they have buy-in from the beginning, and that's part of the hard part. I mean, when you're trying to put this together and you're out here in Greater Minnesota, it's real easy just to try to put it together with Greater Minnesota, but at the same time, you're not gonna make that next step if you do that. We do need it to be diverse, all inclusive, with that same principle of government should be small and not interfere with us as much as possible. So yeah, we started the website or the Facebook page a couple weeks ago and the Twitter a couple weeks ago, but until now, I did not want people to know that I was the steering angle behind that. And you know what? I even dreamed about it last night, how this could turn south by announcing it today, because I was thinking about announcing it today when I had you on. And I was also thinking about waiting until let's see how this election goes for the GOP. But I really don't have any faith in the GOP ever doing the right thing, so I might as well plan on them not doing the right thing and be prepared. And so yeah, we're rolling out the Constitutional Republic Party. Our mascot is a wolf, and because we plan on that wolf just nibbling down at that budget a little bit at a time, and just I will point out we're the only political party that will have a predator as the mascot instead of something else. Okay, damn it, we're on the hunt.
And I'll say it so you don't have to. We're going to eat you alive.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So yeah, I'm glad I was able to make that announcement with my friend Mark here.
I'm behind you all the way, man.
Because I think to a certain extent, when we both got started, we both understood the need for that, and we didn't really have that vehicle.
Well, somebody's got to come with a set of new ideas that it captivates captures the attention of the people.
Yep.
Right. And the imagination.
I preferred to go independent as well, because independent candidates did much better than third-party candidates. But the fact is, you can't do it alone. I mean, you've got to have some support out there. You've got to have other people who believe as you do. And when you have that set of principles, they can look at it and go, yes, that's kind of what my principles are. And we're hoping to attract both the Ron Paul type Republicans and the Blue Dog Democrats, because the Blue Dog Democrats were to a certain extent the same thing we're looking for. They wanted limited spending. They did believe strongly in the social programs. Well, guess what? I mean, I said this at the debate. It's like things like Social Security, that commitment's already been made. That promise has already been made. It needs to be fulfilled. Period. I mean, that's just like any treaty, which again, a big portion of what I believe in is honoring our word as a country. And if the country made that promise, the country needs to fulfill it. Even if it's painful, even if it's against everything you believe in, a promise made needs to be a promise kept. And that's going to mean trying to right a lot of our past wrongs if we want to our word to mean something again. And it's not going to be fun. We're going to have some pushback from some of these issues once we start really looking at topics like land back, getting land out of, because the United States government owns, I want to say 40% of the land mass in this country.
Yeah, there's a lot of public lands. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that we need to start looking at what do we have to do to return these from the tribes they were taken from to make those treaties right again. Give them enough land, give the tribes enough land, or that they can make that land profit producing so that the U.S. government doesn't have to support the tribes. I mean, we look at this, especially here in Minnesota. If we take a lot of those national forests along the lakes, they currently have all these contracts for lumber. Let's transfer some of these back to those tribes, and they can manage those contracts. And guess what? Being somebody who lives in small government, now it can eliminate a bunch of the Department of Interior because somebody else will take care of it. We don't need the government to do it. So we're still in the early stage. I mean, I don't want to make the mistake I think the Forward Party made. Forward Party came out with a lot of bang, a lot of sizzle. But here it is now, a year and a half later, and we still don't know what they stand for other than their for ranked choice voting.
Yeah, I expected a bigger splash. All
we know about them as far as what their principles are is we're against the other two parties. Well, you still need principles to stand on besides that.
Right.
And that's been so frustrating for me because when they rolled out, I'm like, hey, this might be an option. These people have money, they can make a difference. But they were so scared to take a stand because it would alienate. Anytime you make a stand, you're going to alienate somebody. They chose not to make any stand, and nobody got excited over them because they didn't know what they stood for. So we'll see how all this works out, Mark. And
well, I want to offer my congratulations because when I look at you, I say, all right, here's a guy who says if I see a problem or something that could be changed or done differently, I'm not afraid to take a chance, swing the bat, step out, and put yourself out there. And I heard you say a couple of times, it might make a lot of people mad, yada yada yada. Let me tell you, I don't care if you have a vision for what you want America to be. It doesn't matter if anybody is on board that first day when you announce it. It doesn't matter if you have 1 million people on board. The most important thing right now in this stage of the game is that you believe it, that you have a clear vision for it, or it is becoming clear, and you're going to work towards it, right? Yep. That's all you do in America is you have a vision, you have an idea, you have a dream, and you work for it. That's what you're doing. That's awesome.
Yep. To make any omelet, you're going to have to break some eggs.
Yeah, right?
Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Normally, I have a bunch of comments. I don't know if my comments aren't working today. I expect a lot more comments on a lot of questions to come in.
Well, I've been rambling here for a while. I'm sure there's.
Well, we both have been, and again, normally we still get a lot. So I think with figuring out how to bring you on, I probably shut something else off.
That's a victory for today. We're still live. We made it happen.
After this, when this is posted on Facebook and YouTube, Mark, feel free to go on there. Put your link onto the bottom for the fundraising for the mission that you're doing.
Thank you.
And let's see if we can generate a little bit of funds for you on that.
Awesome.
I do appreciate you coming on today. Tell your dad hello. because
Awesome.
he would make it a point anytime he saw me on a parade with his DFL shirt on.
Yeah.
To make sure to come out and tell me hello and
Right.
reintroduce himself. And I mean, he was just a pleasure to be around. So by all means, please send him my best regards.
I will.
And thank you, Mark. I'm gonna send you back to the green room for a minute, and I will get back. I'll get with you again in a few minutes when this portion is over.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, brother. Appreciate you.
Thanks, sir. And I just kind of put you on instead of me for a moment. Hey, but yeah, hey guys, everybody, appreciate you coming on. It's been a lot longer show than we typically do. We were on about an hour and a half today. Normally we're on for 30 or 40 minutes. Next week's show, what we're trying for is I'm trying to get an attorney on that can kind of come on here and talk about land rights, as far as if you're a homesteader, if you have chickens, you have small animals, if somebody from the state shows up and say, I want to take a look at your facility, do you have to allow them? What's your benefits to do so? So we're working on that for next week's show. Hopefully we'll get somebody locked on. And other than that, guys, I appreciate you all coming on and joining us today. Remember, independent is power. And stay tuned. You're going to hear more from us, what we have going on. Thank you much.